what are we actually, doing here? Like in the sense, are we really scaling Ethereum like we promised a while back, or as some people think, we're actually building a bunch of loosely connected, glorified sidechains with horrible UX, horrible interoperability, and different security assumptions. Guys, what are you building? Who wants to start? Are we really scaling Ethereum, or we just forgot about the?
Definitively yes. Things is not. I mean, maybe you don't see it in the first day, but the technology, I think that today there is no doubt that this is the tech that's going to scale Ethereum. But as we mentioned a lot of times, I mean, scaling Ethereum is not about one single piece. It's a lot of pieces that needs to be built, and these pieces are getting better. And I mean, we will see. We're already seeing. I mean, the quantity of transactions that are done in the Ethereum space right now, it's higher, but it's nothing what will be in 1 year, in 2 years. So we are scaling. But I mean, if the people expect that from when the day you wake up and the next day that you will have like scaling 50x Ethereum, this is not the case. So it's going to go step by step, and we are there. I mean, I think that's what we are building.
I want to add that we are experimenting a lot, and we are still looking for the right designs, the right architectures to crystallize, and it's not known what the eventual architectures are going to look like. So we need a lot of these experiments. This is a good thing. And then if you look from, if you put the formula, the problem statement as you did, and we look at cumulatively all of these L2s, or all of these rollups, do they increase the throughput of Ethereum? Yes, they do. They increase the number of transactions per second, they increase the number of users possible. Do they do it at the expense of security or decentralization? Not really. Like we like at least the security initially is on all rollups, pending correct implementation of the protocols, especially zk rollups, optimistic rollups. I have my opinion, but to make it spicy, zk rollups basically inherit security from Ethereum. So all accounts, all transactions are enforced completely by every single node of Ethereum, which is the definition of scaling.
Before you guys say something, can I play a little bit of a devil's advocate? What if I said that maybe you're scaling something, but not necessarily Ethereum, right? Maybe to scale Ethereum, you need to have zk enshrined. Maybe to scale the actual Ethereum, you have to go and be able to, I don't know, just execute your Ethereum transactions, right, in a scalable way, rather than move your assets through some bridge that's secured by some multisig or whatever. I mean, what do you say to that?
But I think there's one thing to understand. Like up to this point, when people bring up the UX problems a lot of the time, isn't it natural for every scaling protocol to have horrible UX? Like has anyone ever used a sharded protocol? They all have horrible UX. So I think you can scale while having horrible UX. I'm not saying that rollups will have horrible UX. They do currently. It's improving, but baby steps.
I need a good response for James Prestwich. Help me out. Are we scaling?
We're scaling the security of it, so not necessarily the chain itself. I think that's what James would say. And I can sort of get to that. So, I mean, if you look historically at how cryptocurrency scaled, it's been 14 years now, we can still only do 10 transactions per second. I mean, obviously there's other chains that do more high throughput, but they trade off what we call, security or decentralization. And so if we can't scale the base layer, where do we scale and where do users transact? So let's ask the audience, who's used a cryptocurrency exchange here? And don't worry, I'm not the IRS, I'm not going to report you, but who's used an exchange before? Raise your hand. Awesome. So most people have used an exchange at least, sort of half the room there. That's probably a bit more.
Surprisingly lower than I expected.
I know I was expecting that. Yeah, they're just very anon, aren't they? But what was my point of that? So my next question is, if you use a cryptocurrency exchange, who's ever lost money on a cryptocurrency exchange before? There you go. Look at this. The hands are up. I like your pride. He was
now
like,
we're
yes.
Talking.
It's like that old picture holding the beer under the water, You're very proud. So the reason why is, the way we've scaled the network so far is that we've taken transactions from cryptocurrencies and moved to these off-chain systems. You can buy and sell, you get your low transaction fees, and that's great. But we've been building these off-chain systems for the past 10 years, basically using Web 2 technology where we have these human processes to protect billions of dollars. And clearly humans aren't good enforcing the rules, we don't scale. So when you have 10 exchanges or 100 exchanges, they make one mistake, they lose your funds, and that sucks for everyone. Or they're just very malicious and they go buy properties in the Bahamas, give or take. So for me, the whole point of these roll-ups is that can we have a new tech stack where instead of using this Web 2 tech stack, could you take a roll-up tech stack for any database touching a crypto asset and just deploy it there? So you no longer have to trust the system operators to protect your funds, but you can trust the tech stack and, of course, the bridge under the hood. So I see all of our projects as like the battlefield for testing that tech stack. And eventually you'll like to think, oh, I'm going to deploy a cryptocurrency service. I'm going to have a database that touches crypto assets, database, that's for Bartek's joke. I'm probably going to use a rollup as a technology stack, because that will protect my funds, and protect my users, and it means I'm not responsible for protecting billions and billions of dollars. And so for me, it's extending Ethereum security to these off-chain systems, but you're not really scaling Ethereum itself. Ethereum's not getting any faster. You're just moving the execution somewhere else. So that's my take. Maybe that's a bit spicy, I don't know. I don't know who wants to jump up next.
Ben, anything to add to that? So.
I mean, I think you're right in a sense that nobody's at the finish line, right? So there's a spicy answer of why aren't you at the finish line, and the realistic answer is I don't think anybody up here is, right? I certainly agree with a lot of the points that have been made about, when we're closer to that finish line, what the state of these networks looks like. I certainly agree that the UX is awful, and that's kind of natural in the early days, but it needs to get way better. I definitely agree that we're inheriting the security, and that is a meaningful, property of the block space that we're producing, but it is a little bit different than Ethereum too. Yeah. I resist the spice, Bartek. Bring me something harder.
Right. Okay. Something harder. Can I bring
have something to add. Yeah. Can we all agree that we consider conventional sharding to be scaling, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So what's the difference between you have less security assumptions in rollups than you have in sharding, but we still call sharding scaling. So why shouldn't we call rollups scaling?
I mean, if you remember, sharding's changed over the years. Remember the old schemes from 2017? The idea was that you'd have a validator set, and you would take your set of validators and split them into subcommittees.
Yeah.
And they'd have fragments, and they'd all sort of, do a partial execution here, partial execution here, partial execution here. But that wasn't the first part was there's just so, as a monster, as I go plasma, you never build it. It was just so complicated and convoluted. Yeah. The second part was those old schemes, they were more like traditional database sharding, where it's sort of here's a fragment of the database, but it's all they're all composable with each other. Maybe a bit async, but they're all composable. Where here we're just deploying separate systems and gluing them onto Ethereum, and we're just trying to work out how many systems can we glue onto Ethereum until Ethereum blows up.
But do you agree that the assumptions are weaker here than in, let's say, in a committee-based conventional sharding, right?
The assumptions.
The additional assumptions introduced.
The old, the problem of the old sharding assumptions was just, sorry, this might be very technical, but because you're splitting up the old, because you're getting one big validator set and splitting them into little small committees, it was just, if some of those subcommittees fail, then the shard fails as well. Where here, the people running the rollups is completely separate to your validator set. It's a whole different set of parties.
Yeah. But are the assumptions weaker here, right?
Well, the assumptions are better here in the sense that most of these rollups only require one honest party who's external to the system. Actually, if you consider, if you consider security assumptions, so for these old sharding protocols, you just assume the validator set and an honest majority. For rollups, you assume a validator set and an honest majority plus one honest party who's external to the system. So it technically is an extra assumption.
Right. No, but you also need to assume that each committee within each shard is honest as well on top of that. Because
Toghrul, but I cannot let you take over the...
Sorry, I apologize.
Thank you for the fireside chat.
That's going to be for the next one. So let me just, try to find, a spicer topic. But maybe I'm going to take, the audience for a little mental journey. So who would be okay, and we're going to be talking, by the way, about the security, right, of these constructions generally. So who from the audience would be okay to keep their life savings on Ethereum? That seems quite a lot, assuming that you've got life savings to keep somewhere. Imagine that, you've got this opportunity who would like be okay, like mentally to keep them on Ethereum and to sort of consider them to be safe, right, on Ethereum. Now, I just wanted to see how many of you would be okay to move all of them to any rollup. That's not that much. So my question is, do you guys actually think that there's a future in which, in your opinion, we will be as safe to keep our funds on the rollup as on base layer Ethereum? And is that future, something that I can only assume that you're working towards to, but how far we are from that?
I think there is totally this future imaginable, and you have to ask yourself, like, what is the reason that people don't trust rollups?
I don't know.
But look at the time that the rollups are in production from. We're in production since March. You are since March. You are since 1 month ago.
These are new constructions, obviously, right? But still we are holding like what, over 10 billion.
Even
assets.
that,
but we don't count optimistic rollups. That's why Jordi skipped them.
Yeah.
I don't think the problem is the maturity itself. Yes, the maturity will improve. Although there is also a question how we're going to be evolving. Like if there is an evolution, then there is still every update resets the maturity timer kind of to zero. I think the bigger problem is, what is your ultimate worst case? Like if there is a bug, because there will always be bugs. There are still bugs found, I think, in Bitcoin, or there were bugs found in Bitcoin many years after Bitcoin code was ossified and in operation. There are still bugs being found in the core Ethereum protocol. So to answer the question, or to reach a state where people can broadly trust rollups, we need to answer this question. How do we deal with the ultimate worst case situations? And I think there are ways to deal with them that do not compromise on overall security.
So, yeah.
And here I want to add, because I think that at least I would say probably the 5 projects, but at least the 3 zk rollups projects that were in the stage, I think that we are projects that we are taking security as a core value of itself. We know the risk. We have been in the space for a while and we know how these things work. And these new projects, you take any DeFi project itself, it has a lot of risk just because it's new. Because the smart contracts are just new, even if they are audited and there, so there is some implicit risk on the maturity itself. And so we understand, managing this maturity is probably the most difficult thing and the most important thing. And we are very aware the difficulties that this matter. And that doesn't mean that we are not assuming risk, but we are trying to assume as less risk as possible. We are trying, all the projects, we are trying to audit, we are trying to set up all the measures, we are trying to put, most of us, we have a lot of still centralized pieces and some committees and things that are in there that are not nice to have. But we understand that the security and the maturity and bootstrapping these systems is hard to do. So I think here we have a responsibility for that. That doesn't mean that nothing can go wrong, but I think that we have a lot of responsibility for this not to happen and work in that direction. You are asking for, it's a very legit question, of course, is when this will happen, but we can remove the multi-sig and just enable forced transactions. We can do it today. It's just.
But can we really? That was, by the way, going to be my next question.
Yeah, but
can
this
you
is
remove multi-sig eventually? Yes. But
we are committed to do that. Okay, but we are also committed. But we are also committed to the security of the funds. And look, if any of our projects, no matter which is, if any of the projects here in this panel gets hacked in a malicious way, all of us, we have a problem. All of us. The community as itself.
Me too.
So, yeah, you too, okay? So here is, we have, and I'm talking in plural here because I think this is a common thing in this. We are talking first. We have a strong commitment to not go crazy. We also have the commitment to go decentralized, to remove these multi-sigs, to remove these enabled forced transactions. We want to build, all of us here wants to build what we are building. I mean, we want to decentralize the system, and this is our core value. We don't want to create a centralized system. For that, we have banks. I mean, we don't want to build a bank. But we need to do the things with a coherent way, with the right way, with taking the right decisions, the security decisions, and finding this right balance. It's a difficult thing, but this is the way to think. And yes, we are pushing, but at the same time, we are trying to be as safe as we can.
So if I can go back to a very important point that Alex made about the critical bugs. Ben, if I'm not mistaken, when Superchain was announced, there was this interesting paragraph in the description, essentially saying, if I understood correctly, that if there will be a critical bug or whatever, you guys would expect the Ethereum community to bail you out somehow by forking or whatever, and then everybody was like, what? What was that?
Wow, okay. Damn, that's one way to bring the heat. Wow. I mean, first of all, that was a relatively throwaway line in our docs. It was not a part of our announcement that we had announced that we had shoved our consensus problems onto L1.
Internet
Ethereum,
never
right?
forgets anything, really.
Yeah, I mean, going back to...
no, but it's a serious question, It's a serious question, I think, to all of us, right? Because, kind of a similar proposal I've seen from Alex, not exactly like that, but, there's a very genuine question. If we're really scaling Ethereum, so maybe we as an Ethereum community should have some responsibility, towards rollups, right? Or maybe not. I don't know. I mean, that's a very controversial thing, to even discuss. But let's Ben, finish the point, and then we'll go back to you, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a valid question that it enters into L1 property rights territory of at one point in time are there smart contract systems that are too big to fail. Personally, for just speaking my own personal opinion, I don't believe that any of us are at the point where I think it would be worthwhile for Ethereum to violate its property rights in the event of a hack. I don't think that there's a number where that becomes impossible or a usage threshold where that becomes impossible. And this particular point that you brought up originally was a particular design to be able to enact that via a soft fork, which would be, I think, be a substantively better way to do it than damaging the property rights with any sort of invalid state transition. So what you're referring to is maybe a point that lowers that bar for where the L1 would have that be acceptable, because it would be a soft fork instead of a hard fork. It wouldn't break the semantics of the EVM. At the end of the day, I don't think that these solutions are like the end all be all. We certainly shouldn't be relying on these mechanisms to go crazy and remove our safeguards. Speaking for the OP stack in particular, our security stance has been very firm that basically generating one implementation that doesn't have bugs is a likely insurmountable task, and a much better approach is to build multiple redundant implementations that are basically done in a clean room so that the source of bugs isn't consistent, and so you have a better chance of surviving them. And yeah, maybe L1 soft forks are a good backstop to that, but we're not there yet.
I was going to ask the audience here, sorry, because you're all here, and maybe someday one of these L2s get hacked and you've got funds lost on it. Raise your hand if you would like to see Ethereum be forked to recover your funds, if it were to happen. Raise your hand, anyone.
My funds, fork.
Wow.
Not my funds, not fork.
Yeah. Oh, well, how about this? I got another way to put it. Let's just say it's all your life savings. So that's your assumption. How about another one? Would you want to see the burnt ETH become unburnt to compensate the people who lost their funds? One person. What a goody two-shoe over there. I'm joking. Only got one thing.
So maybe
no, Alex, go ahead.
Let me zoom out a little bit and keep it interactive, which is interesting. So, guys, whoever said that you would keep your, you can imagine keeping your life savings or a significant portion thereof in Ethereum. Can you raise your hand again, please? And now, how many of you just keep the hand up? How many of lower your hand, keep your hand only if you would be willing to do so on any smart contract on Ethereum? Not directly in the cold storage, but on the smart contract. Huh? Are you thinking of storing your life savings in a cold wallet on Ethereum, just plain in base address, or keep your hand if you would be comfortable keeping a significant fraction of your life savings in a smart contract, not tearing, not in EOA, not in just plain cold storage. So we basically have no hands, like we have one, right? And so this highlights a very interesting thing, right? Is Ethereum only a store of value? Is it like Bitcoin? Or are we building a smart contract platform that potentially can hold trillions of dollars and let the financial system migrate from the world of banks and all these closed corporations onto these open systems? If none of you are comfortable trusting smart contracts, then it's not a thing about Ethereum like L2 scaling. It's not the question about L2s at all. It's about smart contracts and the risks inherent to immutability in general. And this is a much more fundamental problem to solve than just saying, are zk rollups or rollups, optimistic rollups trustworthy or not?
I actually have a hot take, a bit of a hot take here. I think if a future hack happens, I would somewhat blame L2 Beat and you guys.
Of course.
Because that pie, that security pie that you have, I've been hearing that so many times from different rollup developers saying, oh yeah, we want to get it green as soon as possible. And so you're incentivizing people to decentralize.
But I'm on the record to refuse to give a security score to anyone, really. Like, no score. This is like literally saying, hey, on this dimension, this is the risk. On that dimension, this is the risk. And on that dimension, there's like a multisig that can like rug you. So it doesn't really matter so much, what they do on other dimensions, right? I cannot score and say that, these guys are like more secure than these guys because it's like too complicated, right? You're asking for impossible in a way, and I hope it's not our fault. We've got the legal disclaimer somewhere.
Don't trust them. That's the legal. No, I'm just joking.
But speaking of security of funds, I'm actually. I'm of the opinion, I guess, that security of rollups themselves is a complicated matter. But now that you guys all seem to be building those L3s, L4s, and God knows what, I'm actually even more terrified somewhat, right? Because, like I've just read, and I don't know if you guys know that, but Celestia, that launched quite recently, apparently there's something called Dimension Hub, and they have over 11,000 of roll apps, which is a bit of a tongue twister to not native English speakers. There's a little difference. Roll apps are like applications rather than the rollups, right, themselves. But over 11,000, each being super sovereign, which is, I guess, fine. Everyone wants to be sovereign, but if you're sovereign regarding the security, then it becomes a bit of a problem, right? Because no one's gonna like verify 11,000 apps. That's impossible. So why we're actually building this and why we're encouraging people, hey, you can now go to this, rollup as a service, whatever, and with few clicks, you can have your own rollup. So if you put this message out there, do you think that we might have actually rollups that are like outright malicious from the intention, right? That there will be bad people, like deploying those rollup thingies on the L3s, whatnot? I don't know. What do you guys think about it?
Let's see. At least I'm talking here about the Polygon at Polygon 2.0, and here is mainly what makes the security is the proof that you are generating. The proof, the rules are in the proof, and the rules that are following are mainly the EVM rules. So, okay, maybe it's going to be 100, 1,000, 1 million, whatever number of rollups running, but all of them will share the same proving system, and this is what gives the security to all the networks. So it's not it doesn't matter how many users or how many networks you have. As far as those networks, you guarantee that they are following the right rules, and this is what gives the security. Of course, here, if you have some problems in this proof, then we have a problem here, of course. But it's not. So the nice thing of the rollups is that you don't have to follow all the rollups. You are just verifying the proofs, and because you verify the proofs, you don't need to be aware of what's going on. And I think this is one of the big difference between optimistic and zk. zk, you just trust. You don't need to move forward. Here, maybe you can explain.
But the thing is, that's only true if none of those L3s or L4s have multi-sigs or something like that, because you can have the same.
In Polygon we don't have L3s. I mean, everything.
No.
is
I'm just saying in the future. Let's say that we have L3s. Sharing the proof system only works if you actually don't have multi-sigs, because if you have a multi-sig, I can just upgrade the contract for my rollup for L3. Yeah. So in the future, when there are no multi-sigs, yes, or multi-sigs are delayed, I guess you can have delayed multi-sigs.
This is the path where we're going, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we are in bootstrapping mode.
I can just imagine you having the largest team in all the crypto industry with all the rollups coming up, because you need so many people looking at all the code and everything. They'll be insane after a few years.
Can I put another spicy take? Well, I don't know if it's spicy. I'm not a very spicy person. But I just get annoyed at the word rollup altogether, because like even this debate, you know, like there's going to be 1,000 rollups, what's going to happen there? But when you're using these systems, what matters most is the bridge, where I lock my funds into the bridge, it gets unlocked on this off-chain system on this rollup, and the bridge holds my funds. So if that system's completely malicious, my bridge will ignore it because it's breaking the rules, and then I can just get my funds out of the bridge. So what you're trusting is the bridge to the system, and not even the system itself. And no one ever talks about bridges, which is so annoying, because all we're building are bridges. We just think of the rollup as an off-chain system, I'll say, for now. But we should be talking about the bridges, where I lock my money, and how it gets unlocked on that system, and can I bring my funds back? To me, that's the most important discussion that always gets, like, not ignored, but sort of sprinkled over, because no one thinks that way. Oh, go ahead.
I think you're confused everyone a little better, a little more, because we're just using the word bridge to describe a couple of completely different things. Like what you just called is a smart contract. I think when people say bridge, they probably think of an entire system that connects two chains with like smart contracts on one, smart contracts on the other, somebody else said. So we need new terms to differentiate between those. Because like I agree with you, like technically. Is it a bridge head?
I call it a validating bridge.
The validating bridge and the entire system.
Guys, but discussion on bridges, you know, is like I think super important and relevant to everybody. Let's have a few words on bridges. Who have used bridges to move funds to L2s on the audience? Excellent. Almost everyone. Fantastic. So. I've tried different bridges, and every time I use like a third-party bridge that, you know, I literally trust some dudes, you know, moving my funds, I get this funny dread, you know, like I'm waiting, and eventually when after 5, 10, 15 minutes, the funds appear, it's like a sigh of relief, you know, yes, this time I made it, you know, and I remember, actually, I'm sorry, it was Optimism back in the days, you know, when you were using the official UI, you had this option using the standard bridge or a fast, but not necessarily super safe bridge. I don't know if you remember. It was like really trust me bro bridge. And it was supposed to be fast, and I like moved, not life-changing money, like, I don't know, whatever. And instead of being fast, I needed to wait like 1 day because the guy went, I don't know, whatever, was operating this bridge. And there was literally no one to talk to, right? So my question to you guys is, it seems like everybody, or majority of people are using third-party bridges because they're faster and cheaper, right? Than let's say, official bridges. It's just that, you know, when you use official bridges, you know, there's not this dread, right? You know.
Let's find a different word for this, because there are different things. I mean, one thing is one smart contract to transfer funds from L1 to L2, and you're not trusting anybody else that a smart contract. When it's between chains, we call it a double pegging. I mean, that's the word that I like it more. But I mean, in L1, L2, we don't have the right word. I mean, we're using bridge for similarities with regular bridges, but actually has nothing to do. I mean, technically, it's a different thing. I mean, this is part of the contract itself. You are depositing funds and withdrawing funds with a smart contract. The other is just a multi-sig. You know, you described perfectly on that. I would love to find different words for these two things, because they are have nothing to do from the technical perspective, from the risk perspective, I mean, they are different things.
We already have two words though, validating bridge and bridge.
Yeah, so my question was, do you guys think that in the future, you will all, and everybody, right, not just, the five of you, but, the whatever the number, of the rollups is, the builders of the rollups out there, to like maybe come up with some standard or whatever, and here's an interesting story to the audience. A while ago, long time ago, Optimism proposed a standard for bridging. Arbitrum adopted the standard, and then Optimism implemented something different for whatever reason, right? So maybe, what do you guys think? Maybe there's a way to standardize, and maybe there's some value in standardizing the bridges so that we all feel safe, right? We don't need to rely on those multi-sig bridges. I don't know. What do you guys think? Because it's a serious question, right? Jokes aside, I think we do need good bridging that we trust, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, in the bridging conversation, there's a few areas that I think the entire ecosystem can improve upon. One of them is no question, we need to improve the high security native, whatever you want to call it, bridges so that the UX is as good as it can be, because it's definitely the case that a significant reason that people use third-party bridges is not because they want to feel, a pit in their stomach while they're waiting for their funds to move. It's because the UX is just significant enough that they're willing to overcome, and that one maxes out their utility function. So we need to make the native bridges good. The other thing I think the other reality though, is that those native bridges are by definition going to be more constrained by whatever that proof mechanism is, and that is going to come with some amount of bridge or security trade-offs. So I think the other thing that we need to do is we need to make the risk in bridge plays more explicit to people that are participating in the economics and want to take on that risk. So another big shift that I think we're seeing in the industry is moving towards a world where those that are bridging assets don't really have to have their funds at risk. The bridge might fail, and somebody else trying to provide liquidity for that bridge who opted into taking that risk, not because the UX of their other options sucks so bad, but because they want to provide an economic utility to the system. So yeah, we need to improve the native bridges for sure. We also need to have bridges that when they do introduce risk are like explicit about that risk and like give people a place to go and accept that risk. But all of these things need to happen. And there's no way we're going to stop, I think, third-party bridges. I find that very unlikely.
Yeah, maybe I could throw in, maybe this is a bit spicy because I feel like no one ever gets this context. So does anyone here see the Bitcoin Lightning Network as a competitor to like Layer 0, Hop Protocol, etc.? Raise your hand if you think they're competitors. See, nobody. But the thing is, they are competitors. I mean, yeah, so basically, like when you look at all these fast bridges, what they're really doing is synchronizing from one off-chain system to the other. You're not actually moving the funds across a lot of the time. You're just the funds here, they get sent to Alice. Then the message gets sent across, and Alice will get other funds and send it all over the Bob. You're just moving ownership of funds, but you're not actually moving the funds across. And Lightning does exactly the same thing. So all these solutions are more like synchrony solutions. We're just synchronizing across these off-chain systems. So even bridges there is a taboo word. It's more, they're not, like, we call them fast bridges, but they're just really synchronizing across these systems. So I just wanted to point that out because no one.
I think to some degree, to make the native bridges, at least on the zk rollup side, we need Ethereum to improve somewhat because both Jordi and Alex will agree that like within a year or two, our proofs are going to be much faster than they are now. But we will be limited by how fast we can post on chain because of the cost that it will translate to the user. Because let's say if we post every block and we verify every block, that's going to be quite expensive to do in the current setup. We need more gas availability, let's put it that way, to do that every block. And on top of that, to go the other way around, to make transfers from L1 to L2 faster, we need single solve finality. Because right now, one of the risks that you're taking, let's say, for example, if you're bridging from Ethereum to Scroll, we have to wait for a certain period of time before Ethereum is plausibly finalized, before we can actually bridge the tokens or the messages, whatever. Because if in case Ethereum reorgs, then you're stuck with whatever, and then you can actually design a way where you follow the L1, but it's just too gimmicky. And so, to some degree, I think the UX is getting there, but for the UX to be almost like, I don't know how to call it, but like not very different from just using an L1. We actually need Ethereum to improve a bit.
Here, for creating as many proofs as you can, this is important because this gives the latency for exit. I mean, right now, I think that zk we are much better here at Optimistic. I mean, we are talking about minutes and compared to weeks. Okay, but we can do it better, and we should do it better in seconds. And the way to do here is very much aggregating proofs. I think here the idea of generating a single proof for many networks, this is one of the core ideas of Polygon 2.0. The idea is to scale, and the idea is to try to have as many chains as possible, sharing all of them the same proof. And here is having a clock. So this proof acts very much as a clock. I mean, because with that proof you guarantee, and then you can do the transfers between one chain and the other. And I think this is one of the tricks. Of course, here the timings of the proof needs to improve. But as you mentioned, I mean, I think we are going every time faster, and this technology is evolving really fast.
What is the? I mean, just out of curiosity, because I know for Starknet, I think it's every 8 hours. What's the average time from asking for a withdrawal from the Rollup to actually getting it on Ethereum? What's the current time for that?
Right now, I think we are generating one proof every half an hour.
Yeah,
but the proof it takes 2 minutes. So actually, if we send one, we can send one transaction every 2 minutes, and then the withdrawal time would be 2 minutes.
Yeah, same for us. It's just too expensive from the perspective of the user to do that like that fast.
Okay, so maybe we can switch gears a little bit. We still have a little bit of time. And let me ask you a different question. Like in Vitalik's endgame vision, he discusses like two potentially alternative paths, right, to the end game, whatever that end game is. One being one rollup scales and dominates, right? The other one is like, we have a rich ecosystem of different rollup designs, each potentially catering to different user needs. So I'm kind of curious, like in your mind, given that there are some fundamental differences, right, between Polygon, zkSync, and Optimism, Scroll, Superchain. Are you guys chasing for the same user, essentially competing, or you are more in a collaborative type of mode where the pie is big and there's like a proposal for a slightly different user base, right?
I mean, I can jump in very quickly with that.
I want to hear this answer from all of you. So, I'm genuinely interested, like, what is your personal vision? You want to destroy all the others on the panel with your superior technology, or you guys like literally talk to each other and, like want to build something that, I don't know, it's complementary in a way, right?
Well, I think there's two parts of that question. So the first one is, it reminds me of this old quote from Thomas Watson, because I used to work at IBM years ago for like an intern. And back in the 1950s, he said there'd only be 4 mainframes, 4 computers, and that's it. Which is obviously completely wrong. I mean, there's computers everywhere here, isn't there? So I think it's going to be the same for rollups. I think if you sit here and say there's going to be 4 rollups in the next 100 years, it sounds bonkers. There's going to be a lot of these rollups. I don't know how many, but there's going to be a lot out there. So in that sense, I don't see this as a Coke or a Pepsi. I don't care if the Coke or the Pepsi wins. What matters more is, can we build a tech stack that actually protects users from these system operators? And how far can we get that out there to the community? So I'm in my mindset, the rising tide rises everyone. I don't know the Coke, but I'm very collaborative in that sense.
So one thing to remember, like, I think out of all the protocols that are currently on stage, the most active addresses on one chain is like 200,000. And even if you assume that each address is a unique user, it's nothing. We have almost 8 billion people living in the world. So I don't think we're actively competing with one another. We're more inspiring each other to do better and to improve things. Because if there was just one rollup, you can just like say, yeah, whatever. Why do we need to like improve? We'll just build whatever we do, but users have no option. So I think it's competitive, but it's also competitive in a way where we're all helping each other out by inspiring each other to just be better. And so, yeah, I just don't see, at least for the foreseeable future, a scenario in which you have one or two rollups. It's likely going to be much more than that. Whether all of them are going to be like have the liquidity equally and the user base equally split between them, that's another question. But I think there are going to be quite a few that are like popular and used quite widely.
Yeah, I agree that in the near future, of course, it's going to be many, and it's good that there are many, and it's necessary that there are many. In the long run, I mean, this is more having a crystal ball. We don't know how the things will evolve. But the way I see it is I like to talk very much, for example, when I'm talking with Polygon 2.0, I'm talking about a constellation. So I'm not talking about the universe. I mean, probably it's going to be many constellations. In each constellation, we'll have many rollups. And here, the quantity is more about the friction between the movement of funds between the rollups. If we are able to build a system with low friction between rollups, then having lots of rollups makes a lot of sense. I mean, because you have different needs, and each rollup, it can be private, public, private, with more centralized sequencer. Others are more Validium. Like, I mean, they have some. I mean, you can have different kinds of even governance and systems on each one. So, if the friction is low, probably it's going to be more rollups. If the friction is high, then probably less rollups makes more sense.
Who first, Alex? I mean,
Sure.
You know, I think I very much, there's obviously going to be a ton of rollups, right? No question, Patrick, I agree with your like take that like 4 mainframes is like a silly take. On the other hand, almost all of the millions and billions of servers that run today run Linux. It's almost always the case. So I think in general there will be a convergence of tech stacks, especially around one like solid, minimally provable kernel. Like we should seek to make the standard thing that everyone shares as low as possible, because then the rest of the modules can do the private or public, centralized sequencer, decentralized sequencer part of it. As much, you know, we want to extend that as much as possible to the edges of the stack and keep the secure, core kernel very minimal. So yeah, I don't know. I think that we're just also operating in a different paradigm where like the idea of competition is warped by the nature of open source software. You know what I mean? And so like, I don't think that we'll live in a world where one zk solution will suddenly be way better because they have some innovation that is a sticky innovation that can't be copied over to all of the other zk rollups, right? Same is true for Optimism. I mean, it's true for pretty much every part of the stack because almost every part of the stack is open source. So yeah, that's my answer. It's like, I think we'll converge around a kernel, and in some sense there's competition because I don't think it's likely that we'll have 10 standard roll-up softwares that don't share 90+% of their code. But at the same time, everyone can borrow that in bits and pieces from the others where it works, and we're living in a world where like open source fundamentally changes that game. So there's my answer. It's somewhere in the middle. We're in a new paradigm, bro. It's permissionless innovation.
I think that Ben and Jordi just some like if you take the two visions and combine them, you get a very accurate picture of the future. Just like you have different Linux flavors, you might have different flavors of rollups. But yes, there will be kind of some standardized stack. But this stack has to be applied to these ecosystems, or Jordi called them constellations, where funds can move seamlessly and frictionlessly within the systems, and they will have to embrace the exactly one stack. They can like it will be very hard to manage this frictionlessness between different stacks. So we will likely see like a few big ecosystems emerging with like lots of rollups driven by demand of the real world. Like it's not up to us to decide how many rollups there will be needed. Maybe there will be around one rollup by country or by some community, or like some apps will have their own. Like definitely lots of games, lots of application-specific, like social networks will have their own rollups, but they mostly will live within this, just a few of these big ecosystems.
No, that's interesting. I mean, that's not entirely, I mean, it is somewhat, you know, like I would agree with most of what you said, but I would imagine that at least some of you would like try to convince the audience that, you know, you've got something extra, right? You've got something.
Obviously, each of us are all building the Linux, clearly.
Because like from where I sit, you know, there are some things that are kind of unique. Like if I'm not mistaken, there's only one rollup in this group that chose to use state diffs rather than posting transaction inputs.
There will be only one.
Also, there's only one, I think, that chose to build native account abstraction, right?
Can I say one thing?
No?
Maybe it's just the way to answer that is, in my mind, we work for Ethereum, the protocol. So we're just making Ethereum better. Wherever we get towards that is the end goal.
Interesting.
So we are scaling Ethereum.
Oh, so we are actually scaling Ethereum. But on the other hand, you know, there's one of you that says that, yeah, you can experiment with your own custom EVM code, so, you know, build in not necessarily EVM, so do experiment, be sovereign and whatnot. So who's going to audit all that, you know? So
thank you, L2Beat.
And I don't know about Scroll, they're going to build, you know, this L3 mess. Who knows? They're still a little bit early in their journey, but...
Oh, I have a spicy take. Please, please do not call them L3s. I think this is all of our, collectively, a lot of the people up here memed L2. Please do not make L3s, L4s, and L5s a thing. They're just chains. They're all just layer 2 chains. And sure, they can talk to other L2s, and maybe that makes them like vaguely an L3, but for the love of God, we cannot introduce a new taxonomy of L3s. It's a nightmare.
Guys, we're at the top of the hour. I've got a lot of questions regarding DA as well. It's like yet another topic and kind of worms, I think, especially when your applications will have a choice what DA to use, whether to put data on chain or whether to put data on, I don't know, EigenLayer or Celestia, Avail, or in my computer. You know, I can take your data. If you give me your data, I can take your data. But that's going to be tomorrow. The next panel is tomorrow. But today, you know, thanks you so much. I hope you guys appreciated these rock stars here as much as I did. Thank you.